Well, hello two-channel listeners, and welcome back for what is episode number 4. To those of you who've started to subscribe to my channel, a big hearty thank you. I appreciate that. I hope that you find these entertaining, as well as you learned a little bit something new about the used audio market and just two-channel listening in general. Pretty excited about today's episode because I got something new to unveil here for you guys. New vintage, as it were. I have with me some KEF 1042s that are on loan from my friend Dave Drzyski in Eagle, Idaho here. Dave has just started a brand new business where he is basically restoring vintage audio equipment, and definitely speakers is a big part of that. His brand is Authentic Audio of Idaho, and I will put a link in the description for you guys, as well as several other links of topics I'd like to cover in a short period of time today. So without wasting much of your viewing time, I'm going to jump into what these 30-year-old KEFs are all about. These KEFs, these 1042s, are from the reference line that was introduced in the 1980s, I believe 1986. These are some pretty darn unique speakers. What's so special about these, and these are beautiful teak cabinets, by the way, Dave. These particular speakers were designed to where the box is what they call their isobaric chamber. So it's a separate box. It has two up-firing 8-inch woofers. They are linked together with a force-canceling steel rod. There will be a little link in the video that shows an internal shots of those, as well as just around this particular speaker. Also unique is the way that they do the high frequency and the mid drivers. This black box here is its own enclosure that is bolted on to the woofer box. So while this looks like one piece, this whole black unit here is its own chamber, its own separate unit that unbolts from the cabinet, and it has two 5-inch drivers, mid-range drivers, with the 1-inch soft dome textile tweeter. Dave already went through the painstaking process of replacing the ferro fluid in those tweeters, and that's definitely something these guys need to make sure that the tweeters will handle higher, high power and long playing sessions. These have two separate crossovers. There is a high frequency crossover that's in this chamber. There's also additional baffling material in this little enclosure, as well as the cheesy 80s foam that's lined throughout the internal box for the 8-inch woofers. My first time listening to vintage KEFs, in all the speakers that I've owned, 32 pairs, I've only had one pair of KEFs that were the 300R bookshelf speakers. Wonderful speakers. Really enjoyed my time with them while I had them, but like everything, I don't spend much time keeping the same speaker. These KEFs they are interesting beasts. The specifications of these really kind of surprised me in that in today's modern speakers, when you're looking at the specification sheet, these are known to play at 112 decibels SPLs, and the specification rating for their playback is it's a really odd feature, and I'll also put a picture of their brochure as well as their specification sheet that shows their unique dispersion pattern. They are a 92 dB sensitive speaker, which is quite odd because the amplifier ratings or the recommended amplifier to play back with them is a nominal 4 ohm load. So I kind of instantly had my own biases, and these were also measured. You have to understand, these were measured on the old style of measurements, which I kind of alluded to in episode 3, that it's the 2.83 volts at 1 meter, whereas it's 1 watt per 1 meter. And so these at 92 dB at 1 watt or 2.83 volts is a really nice, easy load for an amplifier, but then you get to the point where it's supposed to be a 4 ohm load. Back in the 80s, there's a unique or a special asterisk that's in the brochure of the Raymond Cook series, reference series brochure, that highlights their 3 very specific reference line speakers at that time, which of course starts with the LS35, your typical British bookshelf speaker at that time, the standard bearer, if you will, and then that moves up in line to the 104.2s, and then they have their 107s in that brochure. At the very bottom of page 3, there's again this little highlighter asterisk that says that, note, buy the biggest amplifier that you can afford and use the power cautiously. It's a very interesting note that's in that brochure, and you only find it in the Raymond Cook version of the reference series brochure, which I'll put a little picture in there for you. So it's kind of a strange wink that, yeah, these are efficient speakers, but they say buy the biggest amplifier that you can afford at that time. And we're talking about the 1980s, those ginormous receivers. So it's kind of just an interesting sidebar on that versus all the different monster amplifiers that are available today. So I decided I wanted to pit these speakers up against my Tekton Lores, and to reference other sites, Hifi Shark. I use Hifi Shark for nearly everything. I would always look at Hifi Shark for what's been sold of particular components. I can put in notifications to where I'm looking for this specific brand, this specific speaker, or this specific amplifier, and within 24 hours, if it comes out on US Audio Mart, if it comes out on eBay, if it comes out on AudioGone, I will get an email the very next day saying, hey, these are the freshest listings for what you're trying to find. It does not cross-reference against Craigslist. I don't really care. I have my own thoughts on anything that's on Craigslist. However, it's a great reference to go to because you can see what's available now, and I'll also put in a couple of screenshots that shows that as of this week, there's 2 Tekton Lores that are available for around $675, and there are several KEF 104.2s available for purchase all over the country, starting from $500 all the way up to $750. I clicked on several of them. I was curious about the conditions of those speakers. A couple of them, guys, were absolute dog shit for $600. These speakers, he's had them for several years now, stored in one of his rooms away from the sun, and the teak cabinets, just, I mean, look at these drivers. They are so clean, the rubber surrounds, they're absolutely beautiful. There's still a nice little sheen to the teak wood, and if anything with what he's going to do to these, including replacing the typical foam, the crusty foam donut that's around the steel rod, They're not cracked in these, but definitely you can see that they're discolored. They're old. They have that aged, worn look to them. Those are the only other component to these I think I would change or upgrade, and I think Dave's going to do that very thing. So he basically lent them to me to play and see how I felt about them with the Furo fluid changed out. How do these sound in my particular room? And it was just a good juxtaposition to have a nice old vintage speaker I'm unfamiliar with against my wideband Tekton Lores here. And I'm going to go back to the fact that with Hifi Shark, both of these can be had within $100 of each other. Now there are some who might say, especially you KEF fans out there, that it's not a fair comparison because these were the reference line speakers in the 1980s, and by today's standard, they would be around a $5,000 to $6,000 speaker. So they should obviously outperform the Tekton Lores. I don't give a flying poop about that, guys. I'm about what I can buy today on the used market with my particular budget. Finding something, if I have $650 budget for speakers, I'm going to try to find what I think is the best match or the best bang for the buck for that $650. I don't care when it was made. And so for me, I think this is a good learning for all those newbies out there who don't know what to look for, or they just see these exorbitant costs of new equipment at these hi-fi shops. You know, speakers that are $25,000, and you know they got their own dedicated room. Look, man, there's so much you can find for under $1,000 that will sound really good if you put the time into it and you have the right ingredients, the right components. So, with that, the opening song by Buckethead. It's from his album Beyond the Knowing, and the song is Point Doom. I also want to make a declarative statement on this YouTube channel. I want you guys to hear it from me. Buckethead is the most underrated guitarist of my generation, bar none. I will say that on this YouTube channel. For those of you guys who don't even know Buckethead is, which is most people, look him up on Spotify, look him up on Amazon HD, look him up on Tidal, etc., etc., etc. He has a wide variety of music. He's just an acoustic guitarist, and the guy is a mad genius, and when you see a picture of him, you will know there's a lot of genius behind that KFC bucket on his head. So, other changes I made to highlight the KEF sound. When I put them against the Tekton Lores, I wanted everything to be as equalized and as fair as possible. So I didn't screw around with throwing in the Onkyo. I didn't screw around with throwing in my integrated amp, my Unison Research integrated amplifier. I did kind of start out with the Parasound, and I just basically wanted to deal with the best of the components that I had to make sure that I was fleshing out as much out of these KEFs as possible. So I have the Red Dragon monoblocks behind me. I have the Classe A, and one new thing that I'm adding to my channel, guys, is that I no longer am using Spotify doing the Wi-Fi part with the Bluetooth to the RS Bloom little guy right here. I wanted to make sure that I was using the best quality songs for critical listening as possible. So Amazon right now happens to have a 90-day trial on their HD music. I've started that 90-day trial, and that brings me to the 3 songs that I was able to use for my critical listening sessions against these 3 speakers. My lovely ladies that I like to use quite often, so Melody Gardot, her Live in Europe album, I always use The Rain. I love the acoustical space. It's just a fantastic album. There's just so many instruments in there, and the band they're just phenomenal. A new song that I've added to my critical listening list is Sarah Bareilles from her Live at the Variety in Atlanta, and I use her Love on the Rocks song, her cover song. Again, that particular song on Amazon was a 2496 resolution. The Melody Gardot was regular CD quality, and I also used my stand by the Sia from her Some people have real problems, and it's soon will be found. Basically, that's also CD quality resolution, the 1644 resolution. What's kind of nice about Amazon is the HD music files are minimum CD quality. There is nothing that goes below CD quality, whereas with Spotify it's been kind of a convenient go-to for me for a long time, but they max out at 320 kilobits per second, and that's the best sound quality that you can get from them. So, you know, just on that particular aside, I needed to go back to having higher quality resolution for these critical listening, and to give you guys the best that I can for the video. So, interesting fact about the KEF, or at least for me, and I've seen other reviewers say the same thing. When you're in your position and you're listening to the KEFs, they have this ability to lock voices like a laser beam in your space. And what I mean by they're just focused like a laser beam in your space, you have your head at the right position. If you move to the left a few inches, you move to the right a few inches, all of a sudden the entire sound stage has shifted a great deal, 70-80%, to the speaker that you are just slightly leaning towards. And so for me, that, you know, that's a bit of a detraction. I'm sure that has a lot to do with the way the crossover networks are designed in the speaker and the overall speaker design itself. However, what was really interesting about these is they're a short box. The tweeter, as you can see, is way below the ears, and so naturally my bias is toward wider band speakers. I would have thought that the Tektons would have given me a much bigger soundstage, would have actually played at a much higher level, and the sound floor, or should I say the top of the soundstage, was definitely within reach of my ears. The way that the sound came at me, the wall, the dispersion pattern, it felt like there was kind of a glass ceiling for them in my space at just over 8 feet away. And with that, the interesting dispersion pattern of the KEFs is that they go up like this, they arc up. So for 1 meter, 2 meter, 3 meters, they just continue to climb with the way that they're designed. And that absolutely, I completely noticed that when I was listening critically to these 3 songs, that the oral arrangement was just quite amazing with the KEFs. Even though the top of the mid-range driver is 4 inches below the Tektons, if my eyes were closed, bar none, there's no contest that the KEFs had a much larger soundstage. They played much higher out beside the boxes, and the Tektons were definitely more focused on playing within the boxes. So regardless of the distance from speaker to speaker, and regardless of the toe in, the Tektons just have this, here's your presentation. No matter what, you have room to move your head back and forth within this presentation, and it's forgiving, but as far as everything else goes, the KEFs did what I look for when I'm paying attention to speakers. Early on, my bias, if I was to put down, I think the Tektons would have beat the KEFs in my critical listening sessions, and I was absolutely wrong. For me, in my space, closing my eyes, listening to the KEFs at night, and the way that the instrument separation comes at me, the way that the voices float, and the fact that as long as my head is completely laser centered down and focused on a specific spot I have behind me, I could hear music coming from all these different directions, and it's very pleasing. It's what most audiophiles look for. It's an experience. It's sitting back, the lights are off, you're not paying attention to anything, but you're absorbing the palpability of your favorite music. It is just something that you experience with your head and your heart, and it's stress relieving. It's what we all aspire to do or to appreciate in this. So it's, for me, I want to make sure that you guys understand while I go through all these different components, I throw all this different stuff in here and I buy and sell and flip, etc., etc., etc. For me, at the end of the day, guys, I still am about what am I listening to? Is it pleasing to me? Is it an emotional response? Does it make the hairs on my arms and the hairs on the back of my neck stand up? Or do I sit there and I go, what the hell? That happens. And you know, but these KEFs, absolutely, if Dave didn't still have some work to do, and they're kind of his little babies that he wants for his audio channel, I'd be hard pressed to not buy them from him right now. If I had to make a decision that I could only have 2 pairs of speakers, and my wife said, right now, these are the ones that would stay, the Tektons would go, and I would start my research all over again for what's the next best for my dollars. So without further ado, guys, I wanted to keep this particular video shorter for you. I will put several links. Again, the Hifi Shark, use it. Buckethead, look him up. You need to, you must. And do not, under any circumstances, discount 30-year-old vintage speakers. When you got guys like Dave who will willingly take them and update them, upgrade them, he can do anything as far as the cabinet goes, as far as the crossovers go. It's worth putting a few $100s in, because at the end of the day, let's say these suckers are $1,000 all in. These were top of the line in their day, and anything right now that's in that $5,000 category, I'd rather spend $1,000 on these, bar none. Absolutely. So without further ado, I appreciate you guys tuning in. For those of you who haven't subscribed yet, I have a lot more in the coming weeks that I need to add. Talk about the Marants. I just took delivery of some fine audio F501s, another British speaker that I'm very excited to share with you guys. There's only one distributor in all of the United States right now, so can't wait to get those out here and plugged in and sharing some music with you guys. So have a wonderful week. Thank you for tuning in, and I will catch you next Saturday.